Well, welcome to Smart and Messy Situation. We, well, hello. Well,
All
welcome
right.
to Smart and Messy Situations. We're here with Energy Master, well, AKA Prince Wyndham. That's what you see on the screen, but this is Energy Master. Um, we're here to discuss what we've discussed in part one and part two.
Uh,
We
Hold on.
will be discussing Darius J. Wright's method, but we are now picking up from our last video in which we spoke about the black box, and he's going to tell you how that ties into this. Okay, Energy Master, do your thing.
Okay, so first of all, peace. So when we left off last time, I did introduce this concept of the black people of planet Earth being sort of like a black box. So to give you a little bit of background, so by black box, we're talking about, you know, how with a airplane, when the plane goes down, it has this thing called the black box that basically records like all the flight data to kind of let the recovery crew know what factors led to the plane crashing. And so similarly through a number of means, but particularly something that's called melanin memory, because you melanin is the main type of pigment that gives your skin and hair its color. Well, it has what's called paramagnetic properties, and what paramagnetism is it means that the material can imitate the field of an incoming magnetic field, and in our case, we're talking about the sun's field. And so, with magnetism, you have what are called magnetic moments that are these permanently recorded events of changes in magnetism, and this is the way that scientists use to be able to like look at like magnetic field lines on the ocean floor to be able to tell when you had these cosmic events or other changes like the poles of the earth shift and things of that nature. All right, and so it records a history in that way. And so because our melanin is also field forming in that particular way and field imitating in that way, it records a history. And so there's a lot more, much more that goes with that. But in order to fully understand the concept, we'll have to go back to the 1970s. So in the middle of the 1970s, there was a channeler who was doing these sessions and had a study group that was associated with it, where you had these well-known individuals, including celebrities like Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, who would participate and ask questions at these sessions. And so this channeler, she was connecting with an entity named Tom, who claimed to be the representative of this non-physical entity group called the Council of Nine. And so it resulted years later, like all these collective channelings, resulted in a book that was released in 1993 called The Only Planet of Choice. And so among the various things that were mentioned in this book, one of them included that the black race of planet Earth was the indigenous race of the planet, and you had these various ET groups that were sent by the council in order to advance the evolution of humans. And apparently, so there were other human groups on planet Earth that weren't necessarily indigenous to this Earth. And so this is something you'll hear commonly throughout ufology and these other communities regarding the human template basically being one of these types of forms that's very common. It's common besides on Earth. And there's a tendency, it's if you get into things about morphology and things of that nature, you'll see that there are certain forms that evolution tends toward. Among those being, of course, our humanoid form, another being the carcinogenic form, which would be crab like creatures, and then there's a tendency toward shrew like creatures, so that's mice and things of that nature. But the human form is very common. And so anyway, these what they would do, these groups would come in and they wouldn't touch the black race. They would only do their experiments, their genetic mixing and experiments with these other human races, and then would leave the black races to be kind of a control group. Because whenever you're doing the scientific method, when you're doing experiments, you always have a group that stays relatively unchanged so that you can compare the different deviations with the other groups and so forth. And so the side effect that was unintended by the Council of Nine is that the groups that were impacted by the ET interference, they started to see themselves as superior, so they had a tendency to like try to subjugate or rape the black race of the planet and things of this nature. And so um with regards to the higher plan of the earth realm and existence as a whole, um, everything is part of the same process. So there's no good guys, bad guys, as far as like when you look at it from the higher levels. And so one of those things that we were intended to do was because we didn't have that interference, we could then learn from each one of the other ones, and then it was our job to kind of integrate all of those various like changes in like culture and different things into a single culture that would become basically the face of the overall human race. And so that particular notion got kind of twisted to, you had groups like white supremacist groups who think that we're trying to wipe them out or get rid of them. And that's uh things like some of the ways that some of the teachers of Nation of Islam have been presented to us didn't help matters with that regard, because they blatantly talk about taking the devil off the planet. But the older teachers on which all of this stuff is based is not saying, okay, you're supposed to have this race war where one people supposed to be wiping out another. What it's saying is integration is a matter of going from something that is only one thing, diversifying into several things, and then creating a way of life and a way of thought and being that allows you to celebrate that diversity, but being able to have one fluid identity of all. Because at the end of the day, if let's say you did have a visiting race or an invading race or something, they're not going to pick out and say, "Oh, I like this human and not that human." They're going to say Earthling, and so God forbid, one of these people who is a poor representation of what human potential is the one that they meet first. And unfortunately, that is kind of what happened in the 1940s when you had like the Roswell crashes and things of that nature. Because think about what America was like during that time, and then how our government was and how they were treating people of color. And so you had these people that made a deal behind our backs with a particular ET civilization to allow them to be able to experiment on the people, and in exchange for certain technologies, certain things that they felt would give them an advantage over other countries. And so that ended up backfiring on them. But what they didn't realize, and this is something that has been delved into very heavily by the research of Richard W. Smith. He's an author of the Moore, the Mason, and the Alien series. There's three books in that series where he talks about how if you look at the history of these situations, most of the times when you hear people of color talk about their experiences, if they do have a ET type experience, it's usually a pleasant one. It's usually not something that is horrifying. Whereas on the other side, you see more Caucasian people talking about these terrifying types of situations, and then there's actually a rhyme and a reason behind that as well. But at the end of the day, what ends all this is our recognition, specifically as the Black people in America, because we're the ones that have been mixed and blended culturally and genetically more than any other people. We're the ones that are supposed to be like, okay, we're putting an end to this or whatever. We have, once we remember who we are as a people in the greater scheme of things, then we're supposed to guide others. But then, unfortunately, we know things haven't necessarily gone that way historically.
So thank you. So do you think that it's a very important thing that people of color also find interest in the Darius J. Wright's method? although these people of color have had those experiences, they
Mhm.
don't always talk about it or are not always interviewed when they do have them. So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, because historically speaking, when you've been persecuted for talking about less, let alone you know, out of body or UFO experiences, when you've been persecuted for just being yourself, you have a tendency to want to try to blend in with what you think is the norm for survival reasons. And so one of the common themes that comes up every time that you listen to these like spiritualists, new age, whoever it may be, they always talking about this overcoming the survival instincts, overcoming these fears and whatnot. And specifically for us, what is ingrained in our survival instincts is a unique situation. You can't just lump it in with everybody's situation where your survival has literally dependent on you keeping your head down or not saying the wrong thing or prioritizing having lighter skin so you can blend in with society. So there's a whole larger list of concerns there. But the importance of these out of body experiences, particularly with the ADA method that that Darius is teaching, aside from the fact that he himself is a person of color, like you could see that there's some, I guess you could say some attitude within the overall community to try not to judge people based on what their race or culture or background is, but at the same time you don't want to eliminate the unique contribution that somebody's culture has, because it's one thing to hear people who haven't had an experience like yours, just in social life, talk about certain things versus when you have somebody who looks something like you, and that's where their representation matters thing comes in. But above and beyond that, what I discovered even before meeting Darius, and you'll actually hear like one of my favorite Akashic Records readers, Debbie Solaris. She's one of the few out there that kind of acknowledges the galactic history and origins of the various races on the planet, because it's usually the conversation is often kind of leaning toward more where like the those that are tied to like the Nordic blonde ET races and maybe the grays and things of that nature. And then you're wondering like where were black people when all of this was happening? Because it's like if we were like the first humans on Earth, like where was our involvement in it? So with with folks like Debbie and others, you start to see where one thing she mentions is that you can't access all parts of the records unless you meet certain requirements that usually have to do with your vibration. So if you haven't built your spiritual vibration up by doing certain practices, if you haven't been initiated into certain things, then you just won't have access to the certain records. Well, it was certain things that she was talking about not being able to access. And my first times going through methods that involve accessing the Akashic records, like I was walked right in, and then with a particular experience, there was a mantis-like being that was at the gate of Antares, is one of these gates that they talk about that leads to the universe before this one. So our Milky Way galaxy is essentially an entire situation, entire construct, and so the version of it that preceded it had to do with the Andromeda galaxy, and it's a more abstract type of situation, unless your brain has been trained to be able to take that information and arrange it in a way to where you can share it here. And so when this experience was happening, I saw that it was checking through my head for certain symbols, certain initiations, there's no given for you to just be able to get in.
Your out of body
No,
experiences.
this is before out of body. So let me go
Um,
ahead and reiterate. So there are more than one way to access information from the records of the universe besides out of body. And then I'll tell you the advantages of the out of body in just a moment. But you'll have people that more commonly have certain experiences like astral projection, remote viewing, um, or just simply downloading the information all together. And so I had sort of a blend, and the main difference is the percentage of consciousness that is involved in it, such that your experience is fully sensual. So different levels of sense. Like if you have on a VR headset, you're seeing a bunch of things around you, but you can feel that your body's not in that place. Well, when you're talking about an out of body experience, which is essentially you're having the same kind of experience as you would if you're having a near death experience, you're 100% conscious and in it to where you can feel everything. You're fully aware of what you're doing, and you can explore in that way. But in this Akashic reading type of situation, it does not require for your body to be shut down in order for you to be accessing the information. And so the trade off that you have there is that you don't get some of the sense data and whatever else, but you get enough to be able to grab what you need. And so, as I was saying, it was checking to see if I had certain experiences already before it was going to allow me to see the next thing that was happening. And then that's when it occurred to me that even with concepts like you have the 5% nation, so that's where I get my name, Energy Master Allah. Well, they say specifically, they say God is the black man with knowledge of self. And so you had a lot of people that just kind of took it that you're just inherently you're just God. And then when I'm using the word God, I'm not using it in the mainstream Judeo-Christian sense, but then if you take it back to the actual etymology of the word, which means that which is invoked or that which is found, which means like a like you know how a foundry shapes metals, like you pour the metals into a foundry. Well, what it's saying is we're the form, the hominid form that was on planet Earth. This is scientifically proven that consciousness first entered in such a way that it still is to this day. So the way that modern humans are today, they had to be forged within that upright standing man that lived in Africa during that time. And so we have several principles associated with that, but then that knowledge of self is the important attribute there because you've had humans on the planet, but then they weren't aware of themselves and what was going on with the inner workings of themselves in such a way to where they could take their evolution off of autopilot and start actually doing practices and things that helped us to evolve spiritually manually if we put forth the effort. So you can be black and you can walk on this planet and then never reach certain spiritual levels unless you actually do the work. But then those same things, those same types of processes can be shared by anybody. You know why? Because everybody on this planet are our children. And I think that's the part that's been missing from history so much that we have this hatred like it's me versus you. But when you understand that people are actually your children, then you know your children don't always behave. And if especially if your children don't know that you're their parents or whatever, they treat you a certain way.
So
And so,
just
and so
so what you're saying, just know that everyone can have these experiences. It
right.
doesn't matter what race you are, it's the all are able to experience this and have this experience because we are related somehow to each other, even though we're individuals, we can have these experiences, right?
Yeah.
Everyone.
But particularly the ones related to accessing the truth on things, because so
Yes.
with the O.B.E, the advantage there is that because you're essentially interacting with so you have a time component that's there. I guess you could get into things about fourth dimensionality, but the most important thing there is like it's kind of like how blockchain works in the sense that a blockchain is an open ledger, and so the reason that this whole concept of Bitcoin and blockchain was supposed to be revolutionary was that it changed banking to this thing where you could see every transaction. Before that, most transactions were kind of done in the dark. Like the rich folks didn't want the poor people knowing what they were doing with their money. But then it kind of created a situation where you had no secrets. And so, whereas that might sound scary because you're holding on to this egoistic perception of yourself where you have to protect and be private about things and keep it separate from others. Well, what happens when nobody's able to keep secrets? Well, what happens is that you experience this type of love, this type of unconditional love, because everything is right out there on the table, and that's kind of where you're at. So you can look at it as being vulnerable in that sense because you no longer have this earthly shell to protect your quote unquote secrets. But at the same time, because everybody kind of can sense each other's intentions and different things of that nature, you're looking at the next thing. You're not so consumed with trying to survive or trying to worry about what the next person is doing. It's like you feel how it's this collaborative effort in order to create experiences that we all can enjoy at the end of the day. And so any concept of an enemy or opposition, that's something that's projected by you and the belief systems that you're holding on to 100% of the time. I was just listening to a particular talk about how there's no hell, there's no suffering once you leave this body. That yes and no. There is no inherent hell that you just go to because you didn't do what the pastor said here. But at the same time, you as a creator, as a co-creator, you create within your dimensional space this projection of all the fears and all the biases and things that you have. So inherently, you're creating your own hell, and
So interesting because I say that all the time to people. I say, you're creating your own hell. You're
yeah,
creating your own heaven on earth.
that's
But
right.
when I was out of my body
Hmm.
and having this experience, after I passed away, I had no thoughts of things that happened on earth. The only
Hmm.
thing I felt was this feeling of love, security. That's how I felt. And there was a being there. I could sense a being there with me, and it was radiating love. And that's why I didn't want to go back
Hmm.
because I felt no pain. There was no pain. The only thing I felt was love and freedom. There was like this sense of freedom where I could just go wherever I wanted to go.
Hmm. And so it's important to for people to start waking up to this possibility. So one thing I want to clear up that's also been popping up in videos I've been watching is this idea of trying to escape the matrix. And so as long as you're in this mindset that you're trying to get away from something, then you're ultimately putting yourself in an even stronger matrix of your own design. Well, essentially, so first and foremost, the word matrix comes from the same root as mother. So mother and matter. And so it's this there is a system, a structure of existence that is inherent. Now you do have here within Earth Realm where you have these systems that have been man-made for power and control. But overall, when we're talking about the matrix, we're talking about the overall system of structures that allow existence to happen in the first place. So you don't want to get rid of that altogether. And once you are beyond this far enough, you realize that you participated in the creation of this. So we created the types of structures and challenges here in the earth realm that would allow us to come up with creative solutions that our souls hold on to as experience that we're able to use once we're on the other side and we're able to start creating dimensional spaces that other souls can enjoy. Right. So we built this so we could change it whenever we want to. It's just that this place here, there's an agreement reality, which means that it basically shows you the sum total of what everybody wants. So it's like, so if everybody's attitude is leaning toward we want the world to be this particular way, or we think the world is this particular way, that's basically what you're going to see on Earth. And unfortunately, you do have those people who are aware of this, who have manipulated the media, manipulated the laws and different things of that nature to get people to think a certain way. Even with the religions, they've given you a certain idea of what heaven and hell are like. So a lot of times, followers of those faiths, when they do go to the other side, they end up in a dimensional space that's still here on Earth that resembles their idea of heaven, as
Mhm.
opposed to them actually going to the heaven realm, which was realm five, if I recall correctly, because that's where our temple, where our bodily template comes from. We were designed as a template in one of the higher realms before coming down here into Earth, and then Earth making a representation of that.
That's
And so,
true because when I went over, I had no concept of heaven or hell. I
yeah,
had no
no,
concept whatsoever while I was in that state.
it's literally like going to like Walmart. Like it's a locate. Like there is a structure, like a permanent location that you can go that has like it has like certain records in the heavenly realm, different things like this. But your resonance as a soul, like the different things that you have experienced or the type of attitudes and the way you think about things, that will determine um which kind of places you're pulled to. And that's normally what's happening when you're dreaming. Like when you're dreaming and you're not really having control over it, you're just kind of being pulled to one time space or one dimensional space, or whatever, based on the issues you're dealing with in your waking life. Well, with the out of body experience, you actually have control and you have say. And this is different from lucid dreaming in that you're experiencing the total spectrum of light. Like Darius talks a lot about that. Well, when I had my experiences, something I also noticed is it's the same thing for every one of the senses. So we typically think of light, but then think about if you're only experiencing a small sliver of the light spectrum here with visible light, and there's this whole gradient of other you know free wavelengths of light. Well, think about what are the other wavelengths of smell like? What are the other wavelengths of taste like? What are the other wavelengths of hearing? And so you're experiencing all of that over there. And when we did the other two videos, I had experiences on my own that I didn't activate. They just were kind of happening on their own. And then I started Darius's methods and I gotten through it enough to where I could tell, like, okay, I feel the soul loosening and so on and so forth. Well, since we last talked, this past, it was either Friday or Saturday, I had my first big experience, and I had not one, not two, but three out of body experiences back to back, and I had some revealing things happen. So just about everything that you hear in the testimonies and everything else, that is true. Well, something else happened with me. So when I finally, like, was in that state and my body was shut down enough for me to climb out, what happened is I could feel, that's my daughter in the background, Kalia. And where I could feel entities all around, like I could feel them. My experience was that they were all throughout space and time, really. Like it wasn't necessarily like this body was standing there. Like if I focused on one of those energies or another, I could perceive it as a body, but it's not something that's just inherent. And so I did this thing where, and I understood what I was doing in the time, like as if I knew how to do it on the other side, but then it just wasn't something I knew about here. But like as I'm doing it, I understood what was happening. So I actually reached out of my body, like I had multiple sets of arms. I don't remember how many. It wasn't like a whole bunch. It might have been like either four arms or thing like this. And what I was doing is, so he'll talk about, Darius will talk about how, like, when you're doing your out of body, because it is based on your electromagnetic field of your body and your soul, that there's still that bond that's trying to keep the soul in the body. And so you do have to kind of get distance from the body in order to be able to, explore a little bit more. Well, those arms that came out of me, I saw that they were actually holding that field open so that I would be able to get out easier, like this. And then I heard the voices around me call that the arms of Vishnu. And so I had to actually look at, like, when I woke up later on, I had to look it up to see, what that had to do with. But that gave me the insight that when you see these pictures of like these Hindu deities with these multiple arms, it's very possible that they were able to do multiple O.B.E. So you'll hear a few of us talk about these experiences where we would already be out of the body, think that we were going back to the body, go to sleep, and then another one would pop out, and then we would see both bodies or whatever. So we would see the actual body here. We would see a soul body that went to sleep, and then you got the other one.
That.
So I got the impression that I was actually doing three at the same time, and that's where those extra arms came out in order to be able to hold myself out, and then you can get rid of them when you need to. And so I get out, and so one of the first things I do once I get kind of far from my body is I wanted to test to make because it's so much like being back here that I had to test to see if I was actually asleep. So what I did, I jumped and I did kind of the hover thing because like I've had like the lucid dreams where I could like either float or hover, do different things like this, stop myself as I'm coming down. And so I was able to do that. Right. So to my right, so in my apartment, I'm looking and I see a lot of the same objects and things that are normally there, but I see like all this other stuff. Like there's like an exercise machine and all sorts of things that weren't there before. And it occurred to me after I woke up that what I was seeing was an overlay of every body, every item that's ever lived in that apartment. So like the people who lived there before me, I'm seeing them all as one moment, overlaying each other like this. All right. And so I go and I think one of the first things I did was I tried to go to the bathroom on the other side of the house to see if I could do the mirror thing. So you'll hear about people using mirrors and water as portals when they're on the other side to take them to these other places. So when I went to do it, and I touch the glass, it's solid. And then I hear this voice. It's saying like, you don't need to use the mirror. You could just go there. Or that. So apparently, whatever perhaps this experience I've had in either former lives or initiations I've gone through in this life, it I was basically the whole time throughout my experiences I was basically being lectured by the presences around me that get like what are you doing? Like you got bigger work you're supposed to be doing. You've already done this part because to be honest, okay, yes, I was playing around a little bit. Like I wanted to see where I could go and things I could do. And one of the places that I went was this place that was like it was almost like fully animated, like a cartoon and you had like these little kids playing on the playground. They were like little anthropomorphic kids, like a little pig kid, and like think Tiny Toon Adventures if you remember that show. Now they look like that. And at one point, they all turn to me and they give me this look, like, "What are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be doing something?" I say, "Oh, you're right." And so, so I had a couple instances where I did go back to my body, but I popped right back out, used the arms of Vishnu again. Once I knew how to do it the first time, I just kept doing it. And finally, I went instead of me trying to go to another place, I went into the other room and I saw this figure that was standing there that looked like you went to Isha with me in Tennessee. It looked like Adi Yogi. Like it was kind of tall, sitting down and was meditating. It had his skin tones a little closer to what mine is. So it's what I would imagine would have looked like in person back in those days. And if you don't know who Adi Yogi, it was the person who was considered the first to teach the yogic arts 15,000 years ago, which also coincides with what we say was year one in the Asiatic calendar that's used by the 5%. So that was an interesting, synchronicity there. But anyway, so Adiyogi is said to have embodied the qualities of Shiva in human form so much so that he himself was considered synonymous with Shiva. All right, so anyway, so I see this guy, these long hair, long dreads and things, and I go and I sit next to him, and it's to where I have to kind of like look up at him like about this angle, so that gives you an idea of how tall he was. And so when I sit next to him, I look at him and I realize that his face is like mine and he yeah, and he looks like his hair is much longer than mine, like how I would probably look like many years from now, like this. And then I had this flashback to when I was at Isha, and then I went into the Adiyogi abode for the first time. I remember this thought popped into my head just out of nowhere, like, oh, they finally got the hair right, as if I recognized the figure in the statue. And I was like, where did that come from? How would I even know that? Right. And so, but anyway, so he starts talking to me and he's telling me about how the division that's happening on Earth is because of how muddied the language has gotten to where we're not understanding each other, we're not communicating with each other because we forgot the vibrational aspect of speech or whatever, and that's why Shiva is so associated with the throat. And this is one of those things I was kind of saving to kind of put out there, but you'll hear people when they talk about this concept of like flat surface on Earth. There's a whole lot that goes
Oh,
into that. But one thing that you'll hear commonly come up is that you have these like continents that are kind of like rings that like there's different levels. Like they'll talk about like this ice wall that basically isolates the land masses that we recognize here from the next level and the next stage. Well, one of the things that has come to me is that that structure is based on the larynx of the throat. So if you were to cut the neck right here and look down it, the way that the rings around the larynx and the spine and things of that nature is basically the exact same structure, and it has to do with the role that language plays in creating this reality that we're perceiving and so on and so forth. And so anyway, so he was going on about that. And so I'm shown by all these various people who are like, I'll put it this way, they were like black and brown people from all throughout time and space, including I saw a race of like black grays. Like you'll hear Darius talk about a set of black grays too, but then like when I saw this set of them, they and I kind of get kind of choked up a little bit when I talk about this too, because when I looked at them, so they're not the grays that you see like on in sci-fi and TV, like the because those are mechanical grays. So the ones that you normally see that are kind of like this pale, the the stereotypical alien. Those are actually mechanical suits that came about when that particular race of Zetas they gave up their organic bodies because they thought it was a hindrance. But even they, the various races of Greys, they come from the same lineage as the dark skinned people of this planet or whatever. So, but they just had a divergence that happened, and so these ones that I saw, they were still organic, like they were still flesh and blood beings that just looked a little different for the most part. Like you could clearly tell that they weren't humans in our sense, but then they, they had the bald heads and everything else. And I received this emanation of love. Like I was getting love from everywhere, but then the emanation of love that I got from them, I could just sense their whole experience, their whole history, and they had endured very similar things to what the dark skinned people on our planet had.
so
Because what
we go to the other side. You have experience relating to your DNA or your ancestry prior to you going into that state? Is
like
that why you were seeing these beings? Do you think that's why you were seeing those beings because it was connected to how your DNA
well,
um
DNA is such a small part of it because
not
everything.
particularly DNA,
Yeah.
but
But no, I have to address that because DNA, just like the rest of your physicality, is a projection of your soul. So, like, whatever your soul is, your perfected version of your soul is, it's trying to translate that into physical matter as much as possible for you to be able to understand the nature of it. Now, our lineage, it goes far beyond the physicality, and you can get into things like memetics, which deals. So, a meme is you could think of it like an idea that replicates itself in a way that's very similar to how genetic reproduction happens. And
yeah,
so, because humanity is based on a template that the matter just forms around or whatever, you have these other beings who are based on the same template, and you're related energetically through that. So the same things that resonate with you resonate with them, and so
okay,
you
I didn't
feel.
get you off the subject of your experience. So you had seen these beings, right?
Mhm.
And they were not the graves, but they were what now?
So all right, so grays is a generalized term that is used for a particular set of attributes, and so sometimes we kind of get them all lumped together. But then some people would tell you they're called zetas because a large amount of them they are said to reside in the zeta reticuli system. But they of course, like depending on where they live and so on and so forth, just like we're generalized as humans, They just have like a certain set of attributes and qualities that span, but there's several different types of grays. And then these ones are the ones I would call either dark grays or black grays because they look a lot like our people. And the sense I got from them is they are definitely one of these ones that kind of sometimes have fears about coming to Earth because one of the things that wasn't mentioned with regards to Roswell was that they talk about the evens, but like these first few that came, they were like kind of brown color type ETs and things of this nature. And that was one of these details that was kind of under wraps because if it got out that there were dark or brown people out here who had these types of technologies, then they felt like the black and brown people of America would be emboldened. And then so this is in the midst of a time where we don't really have rights like that, and so but they,
So silly to me that they're so stuck on shades.
yeah, but see, but it's important because that's part of our experience. So part of the template is there's this saying that so Richard Smith he talks about how like the Moorish legacy were master navigators of the seas, right? And so when you're talking about in a spiritual sense and an esoteric sense and beyond, the seas go far beyond just the waters of this earth. And so it is something about navigating reality itself. Part of the reason that we have the dark skin that we have is because we're connected to the beings that first emerged from the void. So the void is from which everything is born, and so we're basically a living representation of that in this space. And so when you're the void, that means you can become anything. And so it's necessary for you to have a void descendant race be on a planet so that the other ones can bud off of that or whatever. So it's like it's the seed, it's the black seed that's planted so that the other seeds can emerge. And so the thing about being a sea navigator, being a sailor, is that good sailors are forged in turbulent waters, not calm waters. And so we have this combination of seeming like we go through all the craziest stuff in the world or whatever, but as you can see, we're still here. For millions and millions of years, we're still here. This birthmark that covers my whole body hasn't disappeared. Like I've got this right here to acknowledge the rest of you, but then this right here hasn't gone away. Like as long as I've had a black uh ancestor within the past 3 generations, then I will maintain that original vibration. And then that's what we're referring to when we talk about the original man. Well, that is important because if something happens to humanity, if an entire race of people gets wiped out, well, they're able to regenerate humanity by certain things that are in our DNA, that original DNA before the modifications came about. And so there's that comes along with that. So our particular specific life path is being able to tap into that original history, being able to look into our own black box, which is where Merkaba. So a lot of meanings for the Mer that's in Merkaba, it either associates with water or it associates with murky. And then you have two major rivers on this planet that were named after that. You have the Rio Negro in South America, and you have the Niger River in West Africa. And once upon a time, those two continents were one continent, and I was shown this during my experience. Whereas it was this one river that ran across both of them, and because it didn't have an outlet, the vegetation and things started to make it look kind of dark and murky, and that's what we lived along. When the continents broke apart, it basically forms this cross. Like you could think of it as the Atlantic Ocean coming down the middle, and then the two rivers being the arms of the cross. And so, because now it's able to empty, it becomes blue. And so, blue light is associated with the throat, and then that's the same reason why our sky is blue. All right, and it's all has to do with blue light being kind of like a container. It's what allows you to exist separate from source, still be an expression of source, but not get automatically absorbed back into it. And so,
Okay, we
yeah,
have
and so separations happen for a reason.
a couple of minutes left. Would you like to complete that part and then wrap it up?
Okay, yeah. So case in point, the entire history of the universe itself, because we're connected back to the void, is contained within us. And like I was saying, that Mer deals with that side. Kaba means cube. And so this concept of a black box. So yes, there is a spiritual light vehicle that is accessible to everybody, but then the physical manifestation of it in this planet, the Meru, the navel of planet Earth is us. There was actually a people called the Meru who lived in the region of East Africa where they said they found the earliest people. And and as the navel, what that means is the navel is the part that connects you to the mother. It's the where the umbilical. So that's basically telling you that our melanin is an interface with the void, the womb from which we were birthed. And so if we're able to tap into that memory and that history of it, that is exclusive to our ancestors, it gives us the tools we need in order to be able to educate everybody else on the planet toward peace and harmony. And so a lot of the turmoil on the planet is because we don't remember who we are, and we take on these other attributes that may not be so constructive to either us or humanity. And because we've belittled our role on the earth, we don't realize that we have a responsibility, a duty to learn those things and teach those things. And then we've kind of excused ourselves from it in a lot of ways by this American living in ways. But I would wrap it up by just if you want to learn more about the ADA method that Darius teaches, go to dariusjwright.com. He has plenty of interviews out there about experiences. There's plenty of testimonials out there. But if you want to actually learn the methods, you will have to sign up to just like any other course, just like you go to college to learn how to go work for that other dude for the rest of your life. Why not go ahead and make that investment? I'm not on the payroll, like I'm in the different groups and things of that nature because I have had these experiences and stuff, and have been in communication with Darius, but I don't have any reason to, I don't get any financial gain off of it. But I would just say from personal experience, it is a worthwhile investment because it will allow you to tap into those things that will in turn help you cut through some of the fat of the information that you're getting out there, so that you're not distracted and away from your purpose, and you'll be able to participate in the great work that all souls are trying to do, which is awaken people to understand that in this information age, you have another source that not only has all the information, but has it accurate and unchangeable and undeniable, so you can compare it to what the state of information is here. So yeah, so check him out, continue to watch this channel. My mom's doing a great job. Like I started paying attention and looking at her numbers and some of her videos. So she was kind of popping before I ever came on here. But but I definitely appreciate all of you tuning in. Make sure you check out the other two parts so you can understand some of the things that I'm talking about. And that's where I will leave it. I know it's a lot to digest right now. And so I just kind of stop it there. Like we'll probably end up having to do more and more of these as time goes and as you have questions. But please ask questions, make comments and things below the video, because that kind of lets us know which things that you want to know about, and if it's something that I haven't personally experienced or tapped into to have more knowledge about, then we'll do that. But we're all connected in that way, and the black and brown people of this planet, we have a very shared lineage, so learn enough about each other's culture. If you don't know anything about South India and yoga as a black person, make sure you learn that, because the vibrational qualities of those practices are important. If you don't know about West African heritage and how that
And
connects
that'll
back
have
to
to
East
be
Africa,
another video. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
you have to. So connect with your people, connect with your history, and then we'll talk more about it in the next.
Thank you so much. He's actually in a different location today than our last video. He's down in near South Florida, and I'm
Mhm.
still up here. So thank you guys for joining SWOT Situations with Energy
Peace.
Masters discussion of topics with Darius J. Wright. Say that website again for Darius's 8 o'clock.
That's www www.dariusjwright.com, and then just navigate to where it talks about the modules and join the modules, and that's how you'll be able to get into the classes, well, workshops.
Thank you so much.
All right, peace.